What's up, guys? Welcome back to Bass Fishing Declassified. Today our team is going to go over fishing the jerkbait in the winter. They're going to show you some extra tips that are unique that can help you go out and catch more fish on the jerkbait this winter. Now let's get into it.
Hey guys, and welcome back here to another episode of Bass Fishing Declassified. Really appreciate you guys watching the video today. And we're going to be talking about if I could have one last video to ever do on wintertime jerkbait fishing, what it would be. I'm going to give you guys some tips and advice on probably the most important aspect of fishing a jerkbait in the wintertime in today's video. Now, first of all, jerkbaits come in a wide range of profiles and depth attainment. You have jerkbaits that have, lips that run down to say 3 to 5 foot. You got 5 to 10, you got 10 to 12, 10 to 15. You got regular lip, medium lip, and deep lip jerkbaits, and different profiles, different lengths, and different sizes. So there's a lot to choose from. So guys, the biggest tip that I can give you, if I could do one final video and never do any more jerkbait videos in the winter ever again, the number one piece of advice I give you in the wintertime is downsize to a finesse jerkbait. This is a Megabass X Nanahan plus one. It's about 3 inches long. Guys, in the wintertime, this is critical to wintertime jerkbait fishing success. Now, there's a lot of different reasons for that. A lot of times it has to do with the mood and the personality of the fish. Their metabolisms are a little bit slower, and they don't want to make a commitment to like a big 5 or 6 inch jerkbait, but a little tidbit like this, they'll willingly bite. And then with that, also in the wintertime, you usually have some of the cleanest water of the year, and the fish are just not quite as aggressive. And all that stuff combined leads to downsizing your lures will get you a lot more bites. And the one thing to remember about this, guys, don't think just because you downsize to a little finesse jerkbait that you're just after dinks. The biggest bass I've ever caught on a jerkbait, 9 pounds, 14 ounces on Table Rock, was on a finesse jerkbait. So you can still catch big ones on it. Big fish eat 3 inch long minnows all the time. Now this is going to be especially good if you have a lake that has a mixed species. Say if you have a lake that has a mix of largemouth, spotted bass, and smallmouth, the finesse jerkbaits are going to be really, really critical. Now, the biggest piece of advice I can give you guys when you're fishing a finesse jerkbait is you've got to use light line and a spinning rod. You can't cast these very well on a bait caster with heavier line. So my favorite setup is like that Megabass Whip Snake spinning rod. It's a 6 foot 11 inch medium action. And I couple it up with 4 pound test Seagarn Vizex, not 6, 4. 4 pound test line. When you're fishing these in open water, you can maximize the depth and get these things probably 3 feet deeper than if you were using 8 pound test line, because you can make a farther cast and you got smaller diameter. That combination of the light line, the spinning rod, the long cast, the finesse jerkbait, it will trigger fish to bite in the wintertime that you simply can't catch with larger lures or bigger line or more aggressive situations. So anyway, guys, pick a few up. You guys will just fall in love with them. When I go jerkbait fishing, guys, like on one of my on the water lessons, that's all I have anymore in the wintertime. I don't even take full-size jerkbaits hardly with me ever again. So hope it helps out. We'll see you guys next time.
As Kyle Cordion with Bass Fishing Declassified. Today's video, I'm going to give you a tip about jerkbait fishing. My tip today to you is about varying the depths of your jerkbait. Whether you're new to jerkbait fishing or been doing it for years, you need to know how, some ways and techniques, little tricks to vary the depths of your jerkbait. So first thing I recommend, don't just have one jerkbait rod on the deck. If you know you're going to do that, have 3 rods out there, at least 2, and have 2 different jerkbaits or 3 different jerkbaits tied on. They're going to run at different depths. I'm telling you, you're going to find throughout the day and throughout the season how important depths are. So I think there's 3 depth ranges. There's kind of the shallow depth range, which is 0 to 6. Then you've got your medium depth range from 6 to 12. And then the deep stuff is anything you get a jerkbait deeper than 12, that's deep jerkbait fishing. And you can do all that. You can do that with the same jerkbait, or you can take the time to buy you a different profile jerkbait that run shallow, run deeper, have the bigger bill. So I'm going to tell you how to do it with a single jerkbait, because it seemed like inevitably I would have one particular jerkbait. Let's say it's the Smithwick Rogue FX. Okay, this is a 4.5 inch, 3/8 ounce bait, and this color has got a lot of bone to it, a lot of chartreuse. I believe they call this violet chartreuse, so it's got this kind of violet purpley hue, translucent all the way through it. Let's say this is the color they're munching on that day. I don't have this color in a really shallow one or a medium one or a deep one. I've only got it right here in this. This is my option. So if I want to catch them at different depths in the water column, I have to know how to modify this bait. So right out the box, this bait's going to run 6 to 8 foot deep. So I'm kind of hitting the lower end of the shallow water and kind of the start of the medium range. And so first thing I can do to vary depths with this is my fishing line. I can literally make this shallower if I want to throw it on monofilament or heavier fluorocarbon. Monofilament will float, braid will float. I don't recommend throwing a jerkbait with braid unless maybe you're in like some thick grass or something and you're trying to tick the tops and you want to rip it free. But mono will help it run shallower. Fluorocarbon is going to sink. So you can go to heavier fluorocarbon and you're going to get a little more rise. You're going to go to lighter fluorocarbon, smaller diameter when I say lighter. So if you go down to, let's say if you're at 10 pound fluorocarbon, this is probably going to run that 6 to 8 foot. If I went to 15 fluorocarbon, it's probably going to be like 5 to 6. If I go down to 8 or 6 pound fluorocarbon, I'm probably going to get this bait down to 10 or 12 just by changing my line. So when I talk about having 2 or 3 different setups on the boat, you may just want to have 2 or 3 different line sizes, and that's going to immediately vary the range of it. It's not going to affect how the bait works. It's just going to get it a little deeper or keep it a little shallower. The other thing that I like to do is I vary my treble hooks. I've got this treble hook box here, and it is loaded with a variety of eagle claw. I've got trocars in here. I've got mega bass hooks in here. I've got tons of different treble hooks in here, and they all have different shapes to them, round bend, straight bends. We got the mega bass with the rear treble, all kinds of different hooks in there. But you can vary the hooks on your bait. And obviously the heavier the hook, the more it's going to sink. Be careful when you do that. Make sure you vary it in a way that the bait sinks uniformly. You don't want your bait to ever tail sink, and you don't really want it to head sink. So be careful with that. You might want to play with where you put the hooks. But find you some hooks that you like and do that to help you vary your depth. You can do that. So again, 2 or 3 rods, you can just have different hooks on them. And you're going to get varying depth ranges. The other thing that I've done for years and years is use these dots. I mean, look how they're falling out of the package. These are suspended strips, right? So these are like old. I don't even think you can get them this brand. I mean, this thing looks like it's from the 50s. I'm not even that old, but somehow I got them. And I've had them for years and years and years. And then also, these are just suspended dots. I know you can still get suspended dots. I'm not with Storm, but there's some Storm suspended dots. So you can see these are round. And compared to my finger, they're pretty small. They're about the size of like a pea. And then these strips, you know, they're about, I don't know, I'd say they're like 1 inch long and, maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch wide, probably 1/4 inch wide. Either way, these are 2 different, all they are is lead stickers, and you just put them on the bait. So one thing that I've learned, got myself hooked. One thing I've learned with the strips, I actually like the strips, probably the best. But one thing I've learned with the strips is, I'm gonna put one on there for you right now, is they work really good on the belly of the bait, like running right down the middle of the belly, or they're kind of flashy. They're a lead gray color, but they're kind of shiny, so they imitate a shad a little bit on the side, so it will give your bait a little bit of a flash, or you can run it right down the side. But typically, I'm gonna run it right down the center of the belly, and you wanna keep it, as down the middle as you can. I'm gonna do my best to do this on the camera where you can see what I'm doing. But I'm going to try to run that, and I'm going to start it just behind the front hook on the Smithwick FX Rogue. And I'm going to try to run it right down the belly. I'm showing it to you so I can't even see what I'm doing. And I'm literally just going to rub it in there until it's good and smooth, doesn't have any edges sticking out. And I'm going to have that right down the belly of the hook, starting just behind the front treble hook. And the most important thing about it is I want it to be level. I don't want it to sink lopsidedly when I'm running it down the belly. And I'm going to put that in, I'm going to put that on there, I'm going to put that in the water and just free line, let it sit there in the lake and see how that affects the bait. Make sure it's going to slowly sink in such a way that it's not too hard tail or too hard head. If it is, I may put another one back here, or if I want it to sink a little faster, get a little deeper, I can add some more. The other thing with the dots, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to mess this jerkbait up. But with the dots, something that I've learned is if I put one dot on the side, right about here, kind of mid-mass in between the 2 hooks, a little bit towards the front, towards that Smithwick black dot. If I put one on that side and one on that side, I actually increase the roll of my jerkbait a little bit. When I twitch it, it gets a little bit more of a wobble roll to it. So you can get more depth out of the dot and kind of affect the roll to it. And so that's kind of neat with the dot too. But that's my tip for the day, guys. It's literally that simple. Have you 2 or 3 of them tied on, Play a little bit around with some lead strips. There's even lead wire that you can wrap around the shank of the hook if you want it to fall that way. You may want to get this thing down 25 foot deep. So there's going to be a lot of different things you're going to have to add to it to do that. Those are some quick options for you. I promise you it's going to help you, especially if you have some brush piles down there in 15 or 20 and you want to get your favorite color jerkbait down there to them and you don't have the right bill size. Those are some ways to do it. Again, I'm going to throw all my rods, or I'm going to throw all my jerkbaits on a 7-foot medium action. This is a Kistler Helium. I like a longer rod. I'm not even 6 foot tall. You don't have to be a super tall guy to throw a 7-foot rod, but I understand sometimes when you're standing in the boat or on the side of the bank and you're twitching down, rod tip might hit the water. Some guys like a shorter rod. You can get this same rod in 6.5 foot, do the same thing. I'm going to throw it on a Series 1 reel. Again, going to start out with 10 to 12 pound Seaguar and VizX fluorocarbon, and I can adjust my line from there if I want to play with the depth using my line. And that's it, guys. That's my tip for you today. And don't forget, these FX Smithwick Rogues, they got them out here at lurenet.com. Check out that color. Yes, sir, Northern Lights. Got that big, bold purple back tit, chartreuse belly. We got 6 great colors over at lurenet.com. Go check them out. Use my code, Cordiana15. These are fantastic jerkbaits, and they're reasonably priced. So go get them 15% off. And again, guys, I don't ever use a treble hook bait without having a bait sack to drop it in. You can get that over there at Tackleworks. And hope you like this. See you guys on the next one.
Choosing a jerkbait during the winter months is probably one of the best decisions you can make anytime you go out bass fishing. We know how good a jerkbait is during the cold water period, but there is one thing that often goes overlooked that helps me be more productive every time I'm throwing a jerkbait during this cold water period, and that's to choose one that slowly sinks. I want a jerkbait that gets closer to the fish, not generally that floats or suspends, because at that point, the fish need to come up to the bait. I actually like to get my bait down to where the fish are. You know, when you're talking about this cold water period, the fish are at the most lethargic point of the year, which means they're not aggressive. They're not willing to chase bait. They tend to only feed a few times a week. They're just not aggressive. They're in a pretty dormant stage in a lot of instances. So when you're talking about trying to draw fish to your bait, it's a much more unlikely scenario than getting your bait down to the level that the fish are at and shortening that gap as to how far they have to travel to eat a meal. Meaning, if you can get your jerkbait down to where it's a foot above their heads, in the winter months, you're more likely to get them to commit than if your jerkbait's 5 feet over their heads. They're just not as willing to come up high off the bottom. So for me, that's why I like to throw something like this Berkley Stunna 112 with laser sharp hooks like that. This bait slowly sinks, so I can get this bait down using 6 pound or 8 pound fluorocarbon. I can naturally get it down to 8, sometimes even 10 foot deep if I'm using the +1 model, but I can let this bait sit and it'll slowly sink down to the level that the fish are at. At that point, I can work it back to the boat and keep it roughly at the same depth that I let it sink to. So I have a lot more success fishing for fish that are in that 15-foot depth or deeper using a Berkley Stunna that slowly sinks than, say, throwing a traditional jerkbait that either suspends perfectly or slowly floats. Because if it slowly floats, you're actually moving your bait away from the fish. And if they're not as aggressive, they're not going to be willing to come up to get it. So that's definitely a key for me. I like a bait that gets down to them. Now, one tip with that is don't let your bait get under the fish. You always want to keep your bait above the fish. So if the fish are in 15 feet of water, try to keep it in that 13-foot range. If they are in 25 foot of water, try to keep it in that 22, 23-foot range. But you can do that with a slow sinking model. Now, a couple other tips with that. One of the ways to help you get your jerkbaits deeper is to use the right rod reel line combo. So in this case, I throw my stuff on a custom built MHX blank. It's the NEPS 78 MLF. It's a short rod. It's 6.5 foot, medium light. It's still a fast action, but it's got a lot of bend to it, which really lets me load my rod up on the cast and fire those jerkbaits an extremely long distance. And then I fish it on straight fluorocarbon. Generally 6 pound test if I can get away with it. If the water's got some clear or water color to it, I might go up to 8-pound tests, but you can get your baits deeper with 6-pound tests versus 8-pound tests. So that's something to keep in mind. And then at the same time, I like to throw it on spinning gear, again, because I can cast my bait further. And the longer you can cast your bait, the greater your bait will be running at its maximum depth. It just helps you get your bait to the fish. So for me, spinning gear is critical when I'm jerkbait fishing, but that's a personal preference. I feel like it just helps me and jives with me a little bit better. But next time you're out there fishing during the winter period and you want to throw a jerkbait, make sure your jerkbait is getting down to the fish. If it's not a slow sinking one, you can add a little bit of weight to it. You can put some extra split rings on it. You can put some lead tape on it. There are things you can do to get your bait to slowly sink. But I think you might find that during the winter months, during the cold water period, a slow sink on your jerkbaits is something you're going to be looking for.
Okay, guys, man, I will tell y'all right now, my strength is not the jerkbait fishing in the winter. Now, I've caught a lot of fish with it. I've caught big fish before, but if I had to say, like, you know, what's my 3 lures you're gonna even take in the winter, I don't know if I'd even have this one on, just because of I'm not as good with it as others. So guys, I'm just gonna share with you one thing I know kind of my weakness is. I'm gonna go on the water, I'm gonna give you my chest footage, and I'm just gonna talk about my weakness. One of my weaknesses, I think. Now, I've caught a lot of fish on the jerkbait today, guys. I'm on a lake right now where they're kind of eating. I might get a fish catch for you, but hey, let's go out there and get into it. So with the jerkbait, man, like I said, my weakness is I'm gonna have to get into it. It's not the jerkbait, it's not the rod. I got the rod, but I think it's just times I get too tense and I grip this too tight. And when you grip it tight, you don't let the whole rod and everything do action. So before I throw up here on this point, just kind of throw straight ahead and just trying to go. So, you know, you reel it in and then just try to be loose. And I just think with me, you know, I get so tight at times, but when you're loose, that whole rod's working. And when you're just not as tense and you're just here, you know, just right here, like I said, just being right along, you can grip this a little tighter and not break your rod like that, like I'm about to. But I think that is my weakness, you know, and that's one thing, you know, with the jerkbait. Sometimes I just kind of get, you know, there's other things, you know, times you just kind of get tense up on. And that's just one of my, like I said, my weakness with it. So here I am today, I'm practicing it, and I've caught a lot of fish on the jerkbait, but just try to get better when I'm just loose. So here I am, just loose. I've got my live scope up there for you guys. They've been on points today. We'll see if I can catch one. And of course, one thing too, always switch up the retrieve. So for me today, there are no fish up here. So for me today, it's been the jerk and then kind of an up jerk too. I like that up jerk as well. I like that up jerk. I did just move, okay. I didn't want Randy to watch the video and see me fish a point that didn't have any wind on it on a day where there is wind. So I just moved up here to a wind blown point. Okay, just so if I do get a fish catch as I'm talking, be better than not. So, guys, like I said, so just, man, just relax. You know, that's my thing. Like I said, I just sometimes don't feel like I'm relaxing. Now, of course, that thing's harder to throw with the wind. So, just relax. I know, and even today, like that water is 48, and they have been pretty on this thing. I've not had to fish this too slow yet. I've not had to fish it too slow. I think, you know, when you have to start fishing it slower, probably in that mid 40s to lower, and they've been pretty shallow. Well, let's go up here and see if we can catch one off this point for you guys. Okay, yep, we have seen your jerkbait. So I'm here, just be calm. Got him right there. There we go. Okay. Little guy though. That one's off the point off this brush pile. That's a small fish right there, but still, it's fun. It is fun for sure. Okay. All right, guys. I know that was a small one right there, but still, it is fun. Like I said, guys, just try not to tense up with that wrist. Just something, man. Just, you know, a little quiet deal that you don't hear people talk about. Okay. And if you want to see more action from this day, I'm gonna have a video on my new channel, The Fishing Coach, guys. Go check it out. Bunch of good content, and man, appreciate you. We'll see you on the next one.